So the Harry Healy introduction. This is how I did it. So what we have here is the actual introduction. Let's start at the beginning and I'll go through it step by step. The first thing you need is a storyline. You've got to have a good idea about what you're going to do and what you're going to record. Harry come up with the initial idea of a video of, an introduction of him getting stuck in a lift. I needed a location for that because he also wanted his name in the display. Now this lift, the ground floor, is actually the second floor, and the display was perfect. Because on the ground floor, the 2 comes out on there, and then I knew that there was enough room in the rest of the display to put HARRIHEALEY02. I designed this in Adobe Illustrator, and using motion tracking I managed to put that in there, so when the camera moves it tries to keep the position of the display. I'll come into that a bit later on, but what I want to do first is just show you the start of the movie. Now this part, if I'm able to pause that in the right place, you can probably see there, I'm not actually there. There you go. That's because I filmed that part twice. This is the original footage. Now it's a bit squashed, but it's good enough. Let's start off at the beginning here. Here's me with my my notepad. I've got the camera on a tripod in the corner on the back wall of the lift, right in the corner. I managed to get that spot on right in the middle. That's because my camera has Wi-Fi, and on my notepad up here there is my mobile phone, so I can see the camera's image from my phone, and I was able to get it in exactly the right place. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go outside and I'm going to film the door opening and closing. Now one thing to bear in mind here is, I don't know if you can see that, frames per second 27.6 out of 50 is not real time, so this is a little bit slower than what it should be. That's just down to my laptop. It's not really fast enough to have all these windows open and play this at real time. First thing I'm going to do is just let the door shut, and I'm just going to press the button outside. The lift is actually at the ground floor at the minute, and all I'm going to do is just film the doors opening and closing, and that's it. So doors opening, and then I'll just let them close again. Like that, and then they close all the way. Let's see if I can get that a bit bigger. So that achieves my first sequence, which is the doors opening and the doors closing. I'm not actually there. So how did I get my outline? Well, I've filmed it again. Let's go up a bit. I think it's about to here. Yeah, there's me going. This site is actually being constructed, so there's not many people on site. That's how I was able to do this video quite easily. But still, I've got to watch out for anyone arriving. And also, I risk the possibility of someone calling the lift from the upper floor, and then my camera goes with it. So this is the part where I managed to trace my outline. So here I come into the lift, and I press the ground floor button, and then the doors close. So now I'm standing the other side of the doors. I press the button, press the button. Now did you see that the ground floor button light and then go out again? That's because I'm already on the ground floor. It's actually floor 2, as I said before. Using this I was able to trace my outline, so I went around and I traced my outline, and then I was able to move that tracing and then put that on the first sequence where I don't actually into the lift. I'm just going to come down to the layers down here. That's the button illumination which I come into. There it is. there's the second sequence, and I've managed to import my outline into the first sequence. Right, so there's the layer. Now this layer is not active yet. There is another layer somewhere. Let me see if I can find it, which follows the doors. I think it's that one. There we go. So this is a mask that masks my shadow. I've got it just to follow the doors. So when the doors open, I'm gradually revealed. Like that. This is Harry's introduction, so I didn't want my outline appearing. My picture appearing. This is why I had the idea of just doing an outline, so it could be anybody. But I did try to feather the lines around here and also reduce them so it's a bit thinner, just to disguise the fact that it wasn't me. It's sort of work, but it still looks like me, to be honest. Right, so let's follow that mask. To do that mask in the second part took a lot of work. Now I had an idea that After Effects could find the outline and do this mask for me and put all these lines in. I took a lot of time to try and do that. All this is practice for me because, you know, I do video editing. I know Adobe Premiere. Adobe After Effects I've been using for probably a couple of months now since I did my intro, and I'm still sort of like experimenting with some of the effects. And this is really good practice, because if you've got a project like this, then you can just try things out. But on this mask, I found that I wasn't able to, there's a fade off part, back on again, I wasn't able to do this automated, so I actually had to put in all these dots all around my shape, and then I did some keyframes. So I didn't do that on every single frame. If you just look down at this mask layer here, these dots are key points. So what I can do is I can go to like this key point here and I can put all these dots in. Then I can move it along a bit to there, and then I can put the dots in the new location. And what Adobe After Effects will do is the dots will move from there to there automatically, from the start position to the finish position. So when I'm coming to the lift, I'm just walking towards the camera. So all that's happening is the image is just getting larger. So all I have to do is just select the dot that I want to move, and just not like that, and just drag it. So I come into the lift a bit more. I just make the mask a bit bigger. I go to there and then I move in a bit more. And actually those new dots that I put in, you can see my head shrinking again from where I made it big. So then we come to the part where I press the button. I had to put loads of keyframes in here because my finger's coming out to press the button. I actually pressed the wrong button to start with. I'll quickly move it down to the ground floor. Those dots are changing quite rapidly now. That's why I've got so many keyframes down here. And one good thing you can do with the mask is when I retreat back to that position, I can just hold the mask in that position there and the doors close. This intro went to 18 seconds. I was trying to keep it down to 15 seconds. Unfortunately I just had too much to cram in, and as I'll show you a bit later on, I did try and speed the bits of video up. But one thing you can do is, now I've got a mask, I can change things around. So if I go back to here, what I do is I go into the corner, and do you see that I've just pressed the button? Now this lift, when you press the call button, the doors do not close immediately. Part 1 is here. That's where the doors are open, and then what I did is I hurried it up, so I cut a bit out already. That line and that line was one. That's the bit where I was like waiting in the corner for the doors to shut, and this part here moves on, and I've basically just hurried the video up so the doors start closing now.
So if I turn off my layer, remember I'm not actually there, that's just a mask. So now I've cut a bit of the video out and I've cut straight to the doors closing, and then I go into the corner of the room. One other thing I've got to do is show you the button. That's quite interesting, because that button, you can probably see, is illuminated. There it is. That's not actually lit. That's me putting in a ring. And there it is as my my ring mask. So if I just turn that off, there we are, it's not actually lit. That's what it looks like normally, but that's what I've done. So let's have a look at that layer. Now you would think that that is just a ring. It's quite simple. You just fade it up when I press the button. It was a little bit more complicated than that, because when I press the button, my fingers go over part of the button. Let me just see if I can find the bit where I press it. There it is. Effect has just started to be faded up there. So if I can just move left a bit, there we go. The bit in green is actually masking out the lit button that was essentially behind my finger, if that was real. Now it hasn't faded up properly yet, but now it's starting to fade up, and you can see the green masks out the bit where my finger is. It's going away now. Remember, I'm zoomed in, I'm on a times 400 here. You know, it's much smaller. You don't really notice these details really. Then when the finger goes away, it reveals it, and my mask area I've just put in the middle of the button there, just to get rid of it. So that is the button illumination, the masking of my finger. So now I have to film the bit going from the 5th floor down to the 2nd floor. This video here isn't exactly true, because I've had to put that ring of illumination on the 2nd floor, which, don't forget, is actually the ground floor in this building, because the lift is actually at the 2nd floor already. I like the lobby area and I like the reflection of those lights there, so this part here is actually filmed from the 2nd floor, but I cut to the lift closing on the 5th floor. So for this part, all I'm doing is I'm just filming coming into the lift with my outline, pressing the button, and the doors closing. This next part is the journey from the 5th floor down to the 2nd floor, and look outside the doors. This is actually the 5th floor now. What you're viewing here is the original footage. There's my notepad. The camera is on top of my notepad, just so I can try and get it as stable as possible. Gives me a little bit more area. You see what I've done there is I pressed the 2nd floor button, and I've broken the beam in between the doors just so that they reopen and they start to close again. That gives me a little bit of a chance to get into the corner and get the right angle. Now I've achieved that now. I didn't use a tripod for this. This site is, although it's a new building, it still has various people walking around, and I can't really bring a tripod into the building. I put it there because if someone sees it, they're going to start asking questions. And also I didn't want a tripod because you can see a slight movement of the camera, as I can't keep perfectly still, and I wanted that just to like illustrate someone actually is inside the lift standing still. Lift arrives at the 2nd floor. You notice I don't do the breakdown sequence yet, and that's because you're watching the original footage. So the doors open, but the breakdown part I actually need a few seconds in that video when nothing's moving so I can do the shake. So I'm holding the camera perfectly still in its original position. I'm waiting for the doors to open and then close, and that is now my breakdown sequence in that part there. And then I move the camera into the display, but I had to do this many times. Now that part there is a bit I want to show you. The Harry Healy wording was done in Adobe Illustrator, and these are all the layers over here. I'm using this, it's called Tracker, and you set it to monitor certain points. Now these points have got to be like quite a drastic colour change, so the corners of the display are perfect. I can put 4 tracking points. Then as the camera moves towards the display, the tracking point moves with the footage, and then the object that you put in the middle of the tracking point, its perspective changes to closely match the display. Now when I get a bit of light like that going across the corners, that can confuse the tracking program. So when it goes like that, the tracking point can no longer find the corner, and it will start to wander. It will start to track this area of light here, and as the camera moves towards the display and the angle changes and this light here starts to go down, the tracking point will move, and then its perspective is all over the place. So I was well aware of that, so getting the right angle was quite important. We're going to come back to that, so we're sort of like jumping ahead here. I just want to show you the next part of the introduction, which is the doors. As the lift goes down, I have to give an appearance that the lift's moving, so I put a line in between the doors to simulate the glow of the floor that it's at. Now the type of mask I've got in use here is an add mask. Just see that down there, add. I've drawn the line, and it only shows the part of the line that's inside the yellow rectangle. So that's probably mask 2 going up. Mask 3 is coming up. To do that was quite simple, because it's just using key points. You just tell it to start at a certain place, which is off the screen down here. Then I think there's another key point in the middle, but the last key point is with it off the screen, and then Adobe After Effects does the rest for you. The difficult bit was timing the floor going past with the number on the LCD display. That did take a long time, because you've got to take into account the distance between the floors, the distance of the floor, because remember the floor doesn't start here and end there, it actually goes off the screen, so I had to allow for that as well. When the second floor comes up, that's the breakdown part. The judder bit, where the lift actually breaks down, it's not actually breaking down. Shh, I didn't tell you that. That was done quite easily with this function here, wiggler. And all you do is you select the part of the footage that you want it to move, and it just alters the position of the picture. This part here is where the breakdown sequence starts, and another part is I've had to motion track the wiggler as well, so that line stays in the right place. There's the wiggler function. The shade of red, that was done quite easily. I can't remember how. I think it's in here. There we go. You just put an effect in, and it just changes the colour. So the wiggler, there's a frequency, there's a magnitude, and things like that. Then I think we cut to another part. Yeah, we do. So we've gone from descending, and now we've gone into this part, which is a breakdown and zoom. Looking at the original footage, I allowed the doors to open and close. So this part you're viewing here was cut out of the editing. And that's the gap there. So we're now going from this footage here, descending, to the breakdown and the zoom, with the doors opening and closing part cut out. So I'm fading from that one into this one. Now we start with the so that's the breakdown sequence. Now we start to zoom into the display. This is the clever bit. When we get to about here, I'll start to bring the HARRIHEALEY LCD text in, which is this layer. I had to use motion tracking, as I've already described. I've had to track the 4 corners Let me just see if I can show you that. There's different effects brought in here. I just tried these out, and the strobe light I think is the one that makes it flicker. These positions here are set by the motion tracker. You can see those circles with the crosses in. That's the part of the picture that I'm tracking. So I didn't do the corners, and I think that corner didn't work very well. I did the top left, bottom left of the LCD screen, and it looks as though I've picked up a couple more points on there. Yeah, I'm not sure what that one is. Doesn't seem to be on anything. But you get the idea. I think that was actually in the corner. I'm not sure why it's showing there now, but you get the principle anyway. The parts where the Harry Healy turns off, well, I faded it off in these points because at these points here the motion tracker didn't do too well, and the perspective of the text didn't quite look right, so I just cut it out and I added that into like the flicker. Another thing I like to do is back here the LCD screen is a lot lighter, so I've colour matched it, and the colour of the text actually changes. And I think these points here on the brightness line, I think this is where I changed the colour, or I did the brightness or something, I can't quite remember now. Yeah, these were keyframes where I changed the colour of the Harry Healy 0. So I motion tracked it as best as possible. It's not spot on. I mean, there are areas that if you watch the original, if you watch the finished result, it doesn't track it 100%, but you know, it's pretty good. Now you notice the timeline here shows that introduction, or this part, because remember this is the second part. The first part was when I got into the lift, I pressed the button and the doors closed. This is part 2, where you're watching the floors go past, going from 5 to 2, and then the breakdown sequence. And then it gets to here. This part alone is nearly 24 seconds. The first part was about 20 seconds. How did I get that down to 18 seconds? Well, I had to move away from Adobe After Effects over to Adobe Premiere. Here are my Adobe After Effects sequences. I've imported both the part where I'm coming into the lift. There's the first part, and then the second part is here. This is where the lift is going down, and the breakdown sequence, and then the zooming into the display. I need to cut, what was it, about 45 seconds down to, got it down to 18 seconds in the end. I did that in Adobe Premiere because it's just seems to be a lot easier. Let me just drag this section across here. I'm now looking at the first part. So this part here, the speed is going at 220, and then it slows down when I come into the lift, and it starts to speed up. And then this part here is much faster. What speed is that? 260%. Then we cut to the part where I'm inside the lift in the corner, and there's quite a lot of variations here. So the doors close, then it gradually gets faster and faster and faster, and at its top speed that video is going almost 2.5 times faster than the original footage. So line's going up. For the breakdown sequence I've slowed it down, so now we go actually slower than the original. So now we're at 84%. And it goes, actually no, it goes right down, so it's the juddering sort of like slows down. So at this point here it's going 40%, so that's less than half speed. And we speed up the video. I don't really want to delay the part where I move the camera into the display, so that is going at just over 3 times the speed that it was before. And as the camera comes up to the display, it's slowing down again, and now it's at 120%, just over normal speed. And then the last sequence is that. Now I'm not even going to go into that. That was easy to do. That's just putting in keyframes and just changing the scale. The next part comes the music. Now the music has really got to be timed into the video. This line here is the music. I'm just going to turn it on because it was turned off so it didn't make a loud noise. Now that part is timed with the doors opening. That's really cool. When the doors close, like that. Now the lift goes down. And the music changes completely as you zoom in. When I put the audio line on there, I had to choose the right part. That's the important thing. I had to choose the right part that would match up with the video. And when I put it in, it was almost spot on with the doors open and doors closing and cut into the display. I had to make a slight adjustment to get it to fit exactly, and I had to increase the speed to 103%, so it's just over normal speed, just so that it perfectly matched all the sequences. And I was quite impressed with that. Now the what's that bit there? I think that's the doors closing. Yeah, I increased the volume of that slightly just so you can hear the latch. And this part here is actually the motor starting, but you can't really hear it. Breakdown sequence sounds are here. So that crash is actually from one of Harry Healey's videos of a lift shaft, and that I think was the counterweight going past. It was a very noisy counterweight, and it sounded like a crash as it went past. So that was pretty good as a stopping sequence, and then the squeaking was from one of my movies. I think I called it Lift Shaft and Stuff, something like that. It was an old Otis lift, camera on top of the lift car. It was filming the, I think it was a counterweight again. Yeah, it was a counterweight, and the squeaking of the lift as it started up. So I put that on there, and that squeaking, the frequency matches the shaking of the footage. So I got quite lucky with some of this end part here. So that really completes what I wanted to show you. There's the complete sequence. This is Adobe Premiere. All these parts were done, all the special effects and all that, in Adobe After Effects.